Hello again, YouTubers, on with SpongeBob 11, back here again on the SpongeBob channel with another Kamp Koral SpongeBob's Under Years episode review video. For today, we are checking out episode 3, Quest for Tires and A Cabin of Curiosities. As you can see here, we are on the Apple TV page for the episode, and the summary says, the weekly food delivery truck goes missing, so the campers must hunt it down like their primal ancestors. So that one is for Quest for Tires. And then for A Cabin of Curiosities, we have a mysterious cabin of odd campers have frightful fun with SpongeBob and Patrick after dark. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Episode 3A, Quest for Tire, begins with everyone waiting at the entrance to Kamp Koral for the arrival of the food truck because they've run out of food and they are really hungry, right? So Plankton does explain that Mr. Krabs just doesn't pay enough for to buy food in excess, so that's why there is a shortage. But anyways, the food truck shows up and everyone is really excited, so they just throw their utensils into the air and it lands on them. Pretty silly. So the concept in this episode is basically that these trucks or vehicles generally are like animals or pets. Here we see Plankton having to tickle the doors of the food truck for it to open, and out comes a whole bunch of shoes. Patrick is taking it in his stride, he's not more than happy to have a diet of shoes, but not so much for everyone else. Everyone is really annoyed, and especially Sandy, she really wants to eat real food. So the camp counselors then volunteer to hunt down the food truck. But anyways, when they go on their way, Sandy suggests that SpongeBob and Patrick join her in following the tracks of the truck to, hunt it down. They arm themselves with dipsticks of all things, and this is the thing that we saw in the trailer. I originally didn't know what they were pointing, when they were dancing around. It turns out to be dipsticks. Interesting. So they do a little bit of fencing, and then the scene flashes over to the counselors, where they are now tired and hungry, and even when Squidward tries to milk a jellyfish, out comes shoes. Meanwhile, the track ends for Sandy, and Patrick is still, he's just gonna follow, go ahead anyway, and he runs into a puddle of bubble sand, which is like quicksand but with bubbles. So he sinks into it but is rescued by SpongeBob, who thankfully is a bubble blower. They then stumble across the counselors, who are now eating each other, which is not great, and then they hear the sound of a truck. So they hide behind these rocks and watch as the truck feeds on the oil in this puddle or pond, and everyone's supposed to be quiet. But of course, Patrick being Patrick, he has to ruin the plan, and Squirt points out that he's an idiot. The plan is to capture the truck in a way by being primitives. Yeah. I mean, I guess they had to find a way to make this episode a little bit more entertaining, right? So I think the funniest scene of this entire episode is actually at this moment. Larry using Bubble Bass's butt as a drum. I think this was just hilarious. And you guys had to watch this episode, especially this part. It's really, really hilarious. I almost fell off the chair watching it the first time. So yeah, they try to trap the truck with a net, but it leaves them in the oil pool instead. So it's time for Plan B. Plan B is to lure the truck into this a dead end, right? So you can see SpongeBob as a sign here. Patrick, this part is kind of creepy because Patrick's just laughing with the head that's also laughing. So yeah, that's really quite cute, creepy. But they eventually do corner the truck, and when Patrick confronts it, the truck eats Patrick. That's the bottom line. And everyone is freaked out and they run away up a tree, and then SpongeBob and Sandy, come swinging over with the dipsticks, and they puncture the hood of the truck, causing it to, go into distress essentially. And then finally, the counselors, they throw stuff into the truck as well, and that causes it to overturn and land on the ground. And then this is another funny part, right? So Larry is seen here using Bubble Bass's butt as a plier, I think, to open the locked doors to the truck, which is also very funny. They successfully rescue Patrick and then, gain access to all the food as well. It turns out that there is a driver in the truck after all. So how does that even work? I mean, I thought that the whole idea was the trucks are supposed to be like animals, right? So they're supposed to be able to do whatever they want themselves, which was the case until this point. So I mean, if the truck driver was in the truck the whole time, couldn't he have just noticed like that everyone else was trying to stop the truck or something? Or was he just sitting back and letting the truck do whatever it wanted? So yeah, very strange actually. And I thought this was kind of weird. I think this part should just have been left out. If this guy was the driver, he's a really incompetent one. Anyways, everyone is happy, so they return to camp, and the scene flashes to a campfire where SpongeBob is telling the story using shadow puppets, and then they start dancing around the campfire like primitives. So overall, I give this episode a probably 6.5 out of 10. I didn't really like the trucks or vehicles as animals or pets concept in general, so that's one thing. And of course, the driver just doesn't make any sense, but there are quite a few funny gags in this episode, so yeah, I'll give that to it. All right, so now let's move on to episode 3B, Cabin of Curiosities. So in this episode, it starts out with SpongeBob and Patrick jumping off coral cliffs and smashing into each other. Yeah, okay. It turns out they wanted to go for the danger badge, which involves them doing dangerous stuff. But Squidward, points out that it's not actually the danger badge, it is the ranger badge. He tries to persuade them to get something else that's easier, specifically the friendship badge. But, when they want to be his friend, he just runs away. So yeah, SpongeBob and Patrick want to befriend each other, but they are already friends. So Patrick suddenly has like a mood swing here and says like something along the lines of, this friendship is getting in the way of my badge getting. So yeah, and he even threatens SpongeBob after that, which, I mean, I didn't take it seriously. Patrick is not to be taken seriously, so if you don't take it seriously, it's pretty funny. This random scene where Patrick suddenly has a mood swing. Alright, so they try to befriend the rich folks, and they, for some reason, bid on how much they want to pay to be SpongeBob and Patrick's friends. I mean, wow, that's pretty cool. But, of course, SpongeBob ruins it by saying that their friendship is free. So, yeah, that kind of fails. And the next stop is Larry and the jockeys. Of course, SpongeBob and Patrick want to be friends with Larry. And the task is to do one chin-up. But unfortunately, they struggle at it, and 9 hours later, they still haven't done one chin-up, so no friendship for that. However, they do get really long arms, so they start slapping each other with it, so that's very random. And then finally, they come across this very spooky looking cabin. It's called the Trawler Cabin, I believe, and when they go in, they encounter this anglerfish named Roxy. So Little Roxy and Big Roxy. They also encounter a blobfish known as Jimmy. This spider character known as Predatory. She actually spun the web, and like Patrick's like, oh, do you do free alterations? Yeah, and then finally the camp counselor, sorry for the blurry photo here, but the camp counselor is Kid Ferratu, which is the kid version of Nosferatu. So, SpongeBob and Patrick are really freaked out, and they want to get out of there, but they notice this, badges. And SpongeBob asks what badges they are, and they find out that they're night badges. So the characters in the cabin offer to help SpongeBob and Patrick obtain those badges. And the first task is swamp ape fishing. So we have, SpongeBob is kind of like shocked that there is a swamp ape in the lake that they swim in, right? So Patrick, meanwhile, gets a bite, and and as you can see here, they are like, getting dragged on along the surface of the lake until they get fished up by the swamp ape itself. So yeah, it turns out that to get the badge, you just have to be fished up and not fish up the swamp ape, which is interesting. And they get their badges. So they move on to task number 2, which is to nocturnal jelly milking, I think. They have to fill up the jar with jellyfish jelly. And eventually this huge jellyfish, I mean, by the way, this really reminds me of the alien jellyfish from Nighty Nightmare. Yeah, from basically the PC version of Creature from the Krusty Krab. So yeah, very interesting. But eventually it does chase them and returns them safely, surprisingly, and of course gives them the badges. So that's really nice. And this leads us to the final activity, which is Sardines. So instead of, the Trawler Cabin folks explaining, SpongeBob actually just explains the whole game, and Patrick holds up these placards showing instructions. So we have one here, and then the next one, and then the third one, the fourth one. The fifth one, however, is the most hilarious, because under this one was this, and Patrick was super freaked out, and he's trying to hide it, but I thought this was super. I think the more hilarious part is Patrick's reaction to it rather than the placard itself. I thought this was also very hilarious. But anyways, now that the instructions are over, they start by having Kid Ferratu hide, and Kid Ferratu does hide in the outhouse. Eventually, everyone finds themselves in the outhouse along with SpongeBob, and they want to eat SpongeBob. This is a super scary scene, by the way. But Patrick on the outside sees the green glow and opens the door, and everyone falls out. So you can see these jaws on SpongeBob's head there. So I'm not sure if they really were trying to eat SpongeBob or they were just pranking, but that is kind of creepy. The sun does come up, and the night characters, they disappear, right? They just fade away. And the night badges also turn out to be just leaves pinned to their shirts, which is unusual. Sandy and Sco are just like, what? There's no such thing as night badges, right? So they decide to return to the Trawler Cabin to see what happened to the night badges, but they don't find anyone there they do not find anyone there, but they do find their camp manual with their friendship badge for signature list filled up. So that means they got their friendship badge. Awesome. So the episode ends with the swamp ape fishing them up as well, which is also very random. I'll give it a 8.5 out of 10. I really like the return of the characters. Jimmy, which is the blobfish, and he's the, as far as I can remember, I think he's the most obvious one. He was the chef in the Krusty Krab in the episode Night Patty. Yeah, so this episode has a lot of parallels with that one, and of course you just substitute working at the Krusty Krab at night for getting badges. And then once, in the morning comes, those nocturnal characters just disappear. So I really liked it, really liked the concept. Glad they did that for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Comment box below, what do you think about this episode? And yeah, make sure to subscribe, like, favorite, consider, keep right here on SpongeBob 101. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!